thought in a heartbeat that I make quality videos.
So I write all sorts of things, fiction, fanfic, screenplays, and my mind is a cluttered garden of flowers and weeds and shiny ideas, and I'm wondering how to form a writing practice to clear it into tidy rows. Is it possible to shepherd untamed ideas into order? How do you manage all your wonderful worlds, characters, and inspiration and not feel haunted by the story bits and pieces in your head? Any practical tips beyond dark magic? Thank you. You are such a constant inspiration for me, both prose and just your presence. Oh God, Nani, if I ever find out, I'll tell you. When you read books, you're getting the Instagram-filtered view of a writer's brain. All the flowers that grew out of the compost heap, carefully composed and shot in optimal lighting. The real inside of my skull is a magpie nest of neat shit I read, saw, thought up, while lying awake at 2 a.m. There are characters and ideas in there that I've been trying to get into a manuscript since I was 12 and typing on an Amiga 500. But that said, really, I think it's okay. Creativity is inherently untidy. The compost heap can be corralled into a very pretty box made of sustainably harvested materials, hand-stained by traditional artisans being paid a living wage by an employee-owned company. But as soon as you lift the lid, it's all worms and coffee grounds and old potting soil and cow shit and the vegetables you swore you were going to eat this time before they went bad. That's what compost is. Nevertheless, having been in the business for 15 years now, D. Dwayne is snickering at me, I can feel it, and having written nearly 40 books, I can offer 3 bits of something less than advice. It's what I do. It may not work for anyone else, but it's what I do. Unadvice the first. If you get a shiny idea and you are super excited by it, go ahead and chase it. Pull up a new page in Word or whatever and slap down a couple thousand words while it's exciting. I know that this absolutely flies in the face of common wisdom, but quite frankly, my enthusiasm is a much rarer commodity than my time. So if I'm excited about something, I write it down until I've taken the edge off. Then I usually save it into a big folder called Fragments, and go back to work on whatever I've got a deadline on, usually. Sometimes the edge doesn't wear off and I wind up with another book, which, darn. There are vast numbers of people who will tell you that a shiny idea is a sign that something is wrong with your current project and the solution is to knuckle down and work through it. And those people are probably right for them, and I trust they know how their own brains work. Me, though, I got ADHD like a bat has wings. My hard drive is a vast swamp of story beginnings, neat ideas, random scenes, and that's okay because I still get books finished. In fact, it's better than okay. Not that long ago, my agent sent a novella to a publisher, and they said, "We'll take that novella and 3 more novels. What have you got?" And I ended up plundering my hard drive and sending the editor a good dozen random beginnings until we found one that we both liked, and then I wrote the rest of that book. And then another one. If I hadn't had all those fragments lying around though, it would have been a miserable experience of writing book pitches and trying to think of stuff I could get excited about. This may not be how some editors work, but it's how my editor and I work anyhow. Unadvice the second. Trust that everything will find a home eventually. This one is easy to say and hard to do because sometimes you get that overload that if you're writing the book about, say, were-bear nuns, you aren't writing the one about the alien crustaceans. Or worse, you feel guilty. If you don't use that one cool thing, was all that time you spent on it wasted? Breathe. Be easy. Every single cool thing does not need to go into a single book. There is no sell-by date on the neat character. You will probably write many books in your life, and all those random characters will find a home. Seriously, the were-bear nuns were lurking for like a decade. For me at least, when I find the spot where something fits, it often snaps into place like a Lego. Easton's backstory as a soldier from a society where soldiers were a third sex had been kicking around in my head for a few years, derived from about 3 different sources, and then I wrote the opening to What Moves the Dead, and all of a sudden Easton was there and alive and they had strong opinions about everything, and I had 10,000 words practically before I turned around. You can also stave off guilt by writing some of your ideas in as highly personal Easter eggs. A couple of my books have references to a white deer woman, a heroic deed done by a saint and the ghost of a bird, and a woman with dozens of hummingbirds on tiny jeweled leashes. Those are all characters and stories I've had vague notions about, but haven't managed to work in anywhere or learn much more about. Still, the passing reference is enough to make me feel like I haven't abandoned them. The advantage to this is that once you do write those in, the readers are all, "Oh my god, she foreshadowed this a decade ago! She must have planned this all out in advance!" Then you look really clever and well organized, and no one has to know that you have no idea what you're doing. Unadvice the third. Write the kitchen sink book. At one point, I had so many stray ideas that hadn't gotten into a book yet. The Tree of Frogs, the Dog Soldiers, the Stained Glass Saint, the Albatross, and the Shadow of the Sun. And also I wanted to write something with Baba Yaga, that I hauled off and wrote a book where I just put in everything and the kitchen sink. It's called Summer in Orcus. There are bits in there that I had been cooking in the mental compost heap for decades, but that weren't enough on their own to sustain a whole book. The phrase, "antelope women are not to be trusted," showed up in my head sometime in college. It's a fun little book, and I'm proud of it, but it's very much a patchwork quilt of weirdness. But it's also written so that if later on an antelope woman shows up in another book in another context, that just adds to their mythology. It doesn't break canon or whatever. Pretty sure I'm not the only one who has done this either. China Meeville has said that he wrote Perdido Street Station because what he really enjoyed was writing all the weird monsters. So yeah, that's my advice, for what it's worth. Some days I just tell all the fragments and ideas that I promise that I'll get them a home eventually, but I need to write this thing here now. Sometimes I throw down enough words to get the story stabilized, and then I'm okay to move on. Sometimes I write multiple books simultaneously. Any method you use to write the book, so long as it doesn't hurt you or anyone else, is a perfectly valid method. If anyone tells you different, you send them to me. God, I hope that was the question you were actually asking, Nani, and that I didn't go off on a completely different tangent when you just wanted to know how I keep track of a plot or something. T. Kingfisher, absolutely snickering. But every word above is true. Love this. Yes, the inside of my head is a huge, semi-abandoned junkyard that used to be a zoo and is sometimes turned into a haunted house for kids. Sometimes I still manage to find things there.